All right, 6.1 review. The first problem up there, we have a perpendicular bisector. So we have the perpendicular symbol, tells us we have a perpendicular, and the 2 4s means that this has been bisected. So if you have a perpendicular bisector, that means the 2 hypotenuses have to be equal. So x equals 5. So perpendicular bisectors tells you that your hypotenuses are equal. If your hypotenuses are equal and you have a perpendicular line, then that means it's also a bisector. So you can go back and forth. All right, let's go to the next problem. All right, so here we have a perpendicular. It doesn't say that we have a perpendicular bisector, but we have an angle bisector. Okay, now, if we have an angle bisector, we don't know really that these two are the same length. Okay, so right now we're going to pretend they're the same length. If these are the same length, then these two are equal to each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. X plus 7 equals 15. Subtract the 7. X equals 8. Okay. And here's the thing, the reason that I know that these two are equal, even though we don't have the ends of these other pieces being perpendicular. Typically we want that to be perpendicular and that to be perpendicular. Okay. So just because something's perpendicular in this situation doesn't mean it's going to work. So let me redraw it so you see it. Let's do that again. So we'll go out a little bit further. Perpendicular, same. These aren't necessarily the same, okay? And these aren't necessarily the same at that point. So you have to have those 3 things we talked about. Perpendicular lines to the edges of your angles and stuff. But in this case, these 2 triangles are congruent to each other. Can you see why? You have side, the reflexive side, angle, side, and angle. Angle, side, angle is why those 2 triangles are congruent to each other. Okay? So that was a lot. I think the picture is misleading. But on the quiz tomorrow, what should you do? You should just set those 2 things equal to each other, right? Isn't that what you've been doing? Yeah. All right, so let's move on. I just wanted to show you that there wasn't really enough information to use the angle bisector rule. But there's enough information to show that those 2 are equal. All right. Number 3, we got to find the length of AC. We want the length, okay? So here we have a perpendicular, and we see that it's also a bisector. So since you have a perpendicular bisector, the 2 hypotenuses are the same. So it has to be 7.2. Okay, we're not trying to trick you. Just plain and simple, that's what it is. Number 4, KM. We want the whole length of, KM. All right. You have a perpendicular line, and we see that the hypotenuses are the same length. If that's the case, then that perpendicular line must also be a bisector, and this little side here also has to be 11. So the whole thing is 22 in length. The whole point about that problem is making sure that you answer the question. What is KM? All right, let's mark our picture here with what they've told us. AP is 3, and if AP is 3, PB must be 3 because of that little symbol there, that hash mark. AC is 5, and CP is 4. So it wants to know what CB is. All right, so I want you all to count with me. Say 3, 4, 5. Say it. This is a 3, 4, 5 right triangle, Pythagorean theorem. 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. As long as the 5 is your hypotenuse and you have a right angle. Okay, that's what you have here. This is called a Pythagorean triple. So I know on the right side, that's a right triangle. If the two legs are 3 and 4, the hypotenuse has to be 5 anyway. And it's 5 because you have a perpendicular bisector. So I'm explaining these a little bit more thorough, but you all knew what the answers were before we started. This is a fairly simple review. All right, so let's mark our pictures again. BC is 5. Now, this is what I wanted you to see on the angle bisector. You have an angle bisector. That's what these little symbols mean. Those hash marks should not be there. But these little arcs mean they're the same. And you have a perpendicular line from your angle bisector. If that's the case, then these two segments are the same. Okay? And again, just to bring back last semester, you have angle, angle, side. You don't have hypotenuse leg unless you say this is reflexive. Again, I'm just doing a quick review of other things. So not only do you have angle, angle, side, but you also have hypotenuse leg. So if AB is 5, then AD must be 5 as well. Okay? So now the question is, what is CD? All right, so I put the BC in the wrong spot. It goes here. This is 5. So that means CD must be 5 as well. Okay, let's go to 7, which is on the next page. Let me add that. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what this is saying here. Write an equation of the perpendicular bisector. Okay, everybody tell me, what's the first thing you're supposed to always do to get the equation of a line? Find the slope. Find the slope of the line you want. So we've been given these 2 points. It even gives you a graph if you wanted to graph it. Okay, so it's pretty crazy. They actually tell you, point by point what to do. It actually starts with the midpoint, so we can go ahead and do the midpoint if we want. Let's go ahead and do that. So the midpoint is you take your x's and add them together, so -3 plus 5, and divide it by 2. And then you take your y's and add them together, 2 plus a -2 over 2. And so what do we get? -3 plus 5 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. 2 plus -2 is 0. 0 over anything is 0. Okay, so 1, 0 is right here on our graph. So now let's go through and answer these other questions. Original slope. Let's do y minus y. So I'll write it right here for everybody, and x minus x. So the original slope is going to be 2 minus a -2. I'm going to go left to right. You can go right to left if you want. And your x is -3 minus 5. So on the top we have a minus and negative. That's change to positive. So that's 4. And -3 minus 5 is -8. And that's -1/2. So next thing is the perpendicular slope. So if our slope is -1/2, what's the perpendicular slope, everybody? Positive 2 over 1, okay? So we have y equals 2x plus b. That's the equation of a line. So now the next thing is finding the, the y-intercept. So that's why it says plug into the linear equation. Well, what are we plugging into the linear equation? The point that we found on our line, which is the midpoint. So 1, 0 goes in here. Put them in the right positions. The y is the 0, and x is 1. So 0 equals 2 plus b. Subtract the 2. -2 equals b. Our final answer is y equals 2x minus 2. So we're going to graph this. Let's put the points on here. -3, 2. It's right here. And 5, -2. Here, and there you can see our midpoint looks right. Now, our equation, our y-intercept is -2. and our slope is 2 over 1, rise over run. So we go up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1, up 2 and over 1. You can go backwards, down 2 and over 1, down 2 and over 1. And there you have a pretty accurate graph, even though you freehanded it. Okay, it doesn't say to graph it. The graph's there to help you make sure that you did it right. So you can just go ahead and get all those answers, and when you're done with the quiz, go back and graph it to make sure that you did it right. So there you have your perpendicular bisector. It's perpendicular, and those two segments are the same. All right, let's go down to the next problem, number 12, last one. I'm going to blow this up on the screen so we can see it better, but I need these points in the right spot here. So 8, 5, oops, so I can see them. 8, 5, and 1, 2. All right, so let's go through this. All right, midpoint again. Actually, let me give everybody a chance to do this without me doing it, or if you're listening to this, just pause it. All right, let's go through this. Midpoint, oops, 8 plus 1 over 2. And your y's added together, 5 plus 2 over 2. So our midpoint's at 9 halves and 7 halves. So that's all fine and dandy to leave it as an improper fraction, but in order to graph it, it helps to have it as a mixed number. How many times does 2 go into 9? 4 with a remainder of what? 1, and then your denominator stays the same. So how many times does 2 go into 7? 3 times with a remainder of 1, and your denominator stays the same. So 9 halves is 4 1/2, and 7 halves is 3 1/2. So we'll graph all this here in a minute. Now it wants the original slope. So y minus y and x minus x. So 5 minus 2. Again, I'm going to go left to right. It doesn't matter which direction you go as long as both of them go the same direction. And 8 minus 1 on the bottom. Rise over run. 3 over 7. So everybody, perpendicular slope. Opposite reciprocal. Yep, go ahead. Negative 7 over 3. So opposite sign and turn it over. So our new equation is going to be y equals negative 7/3 x plus b. So now we got to find b by substituting in our midpoint in for x and y. Okay, so yeah, you have fractions. Welcome to high school. So y is 7 halves. Y is 7 halves. And x is 9 halves. Much easier than using mixed numbers. You have to switch them anyway, so just leave them as an improper fraction. So now we have 7 halves equals negative 63 over 6. I'm going to reduce diagonally because it's multiplication. You can reduce diagonally. 3 and 9 reduce by 3. So negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay. And then we're going to add 21 halves to 7 halves. So 7 halves plus 21 halves is going to be equal to b on the right side. So we get 28 halves equals b. And 28 divided by 2 is 14. Okay, so what's our final answer? Final answer should be y equals, what's the slope? Negative 7/3 x plus 14. All right, so let's graph this. Okay, the 2 points, let's do those first. 8, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's A. And B is at 1, 2. And our midpoint was at 4 1/2 right here. And then up 3 1/2. 1, 2, 3, right in the middle of that box. Now, let's graph our line. Goes through at 14. So we're going to have to draw this. 11, 12, 13, 14. So we're guessing. Down 7. And to the right 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 3. 1, 2, 3. Do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 3. 1, 2, 3. And that sure does look like it's going to be perpendicular if we just connect those 3 points. And that makes that a bisector. So yes, it did work. So I would save the graphing until you're done on the quiz. And that way, if you find you've made a mistake, hopefully you can graph. Then you can go back and see if you made an error. Okay? That's your review.